Welcome everyone, this is AndresRestart, and today we will be talking about my expectations for Pokemon Switch. And this video was honestly inspired by the fact that there just have been so many crazy rumors out there lately. There were rumors about starters and release dates and Nintendo Directs and translator leaks and all this crazy stuff. Like, there's just so many out there that obviously most of them are fake. Some of them might have some truth to them, maybe. But that's not what this video is about. I'm not going to be talking about rumors or leaks today. It's strictly my expectations, and I'll be basing my expectations based off of the history of Pokemon games, the way they've been trending, the improvements they've been made over each generation, and what I think they'll be taking advantage of with the Nintendo Switch, because Game Freak always takes advantage of the hardware they put their games on. So yeah guys, this is going to be a fun little discussion video where I'm going to tell you guys what I think will be happening for Pokemon Switch. So just sit back, relax, remember to like this video because it'll really help me out, and subscribe if you've never been here before if you like Nintendo content. So without further ado, let's get started. Now, one of the first things I actually want to talk about is the graphics. Now, the thing about the graphics is that, like I said beforehand, Game Freak always takes advantage of the hardware they put their games on. But if you look at all the Pokemon games, you know, generation to generation, game to game, year by year, they typically make incremental graphical upgrades. That said, with the Nintendo Switch, it is going to be the biggest hardware jump Game Freak and Pokemon has ever made. This is like a multi-generational jump. Like, it's somewhere between 2 and 3 generations worth of a jump in terms of actual power and performance here. So it's reasonable to expect there to be maybe the biggest jump we've ever seen for Pokemon. But what will we actually see? What can we expect? Well, I think worst case scenario, that this game ends up looking kind of like, you know, Sun and Moon and Ultra Sun and Moon, but with an HD texture pack, so everything's a lot more clear and crisp. The lighting might be a little bit better, the textures will be a lot more clear, and it'll be at a higher resolution. That's the worst case scenario here. Best case scenario, this game looks kind of like Breath of the Wild with a smooth frame rate with Pokemon in it. And I don't think it's going to be either. I don't think it's going to be the worst case scenario or the best case scenario. Often the truth is somewhere in the middle, and I think the truth is somewhere in the middle in this scenario as well. I think what we could be seeing is that the game will look somewhere in between one of these two games. It's not going to be as open like Breath of the Wild, but it's not going to be as restricted as Sun and Moon. Now, the thing about Sun and Moon is that it actually opened things up quite a bit compared to X and Y, and X and Y had opened things up quite a bit beforehand. But anyways, Sun and Moon had you know, completely rid away the grid-like structure in Pokemon games so that you could explore a lot more. In this game, I expect there to be even more exploration. I expect them to open things up even more so, but not so much so that it's going to be like Breath of the Wild. Do not expect that, guys. It's not going to be an open world game like that. I really think that's highly unlikely. So, you know, don't expect that. If it happens, yeah, you'll be surprised. I'll be humbly surprised, but maybe somewhere in the middle is probably our best bet here. Now, taking away, like, the exploration, which is something that's really exciting to me, what else could we expect? Well, in terms of performance, I think the game is definitely going to be running at a smooth 30 frames per second this time around. If you look at the previous Pokemon games, they couldn't even really do that. Like, the Sun and Moon and Ultra Sun and Moon were really pushing the 3DS to its limit, so we saw slow down a lot, especially in doubles or triples battles, so it just didn't, well, there weren't even triples battles, but the point is, in like, when there was a lot of Pokemon on the field, there was slowdown. So I don't expect it this time around. I think it'll be a smooth, locked 30 frames per second. Not 60, basically because you don't need 60 frames per second for a turn-based RPG. You just don't need it. It's not a super fast fighting or racing game. You just don't need it. So 30 frames per second is good enough. But since it will be 30 frames per second, I think 1080p is a realistic resolution goal when the system is docked, and then 720p when it's in handheld mode. Pokemon, even if they really, you know, take it to a whole other level graphically speaking, it's not the most graphically intensive kind of game. So, you know, I think 1080p is a reasonable expectation. So 1080p 30 FPS docked, and then 720p 30 FPS in handheld mode. Now, another thing I kind of expect, though, since there is going to be a lot more power this time around, I expect them to finally make the jump away from random encounters. Now, what I mean by that is, like, when you explore tall grass in most Pokemon games, You may not even see a Pokemon there, but you will randomly jump into a battle where you will see a Pokemon. This time around, there won't be any of that. You will actually, in my opinion, I think you will definitely see like actual, fully realized 3D Pokemon exploring the game world, and you can approach them, they can approach you, and then it will turn into some sort of turn-based battle. We've already kind of seen this in previous Pokemon games. Each generation and each, game, they've kind of included more and more like Pokemon or like silhouettes sort of moving around the game world, and they kind of attack you at certain points. Now those are kind of like, those aren't the common randomly generated battles, but they're kind of part of the equation. I think we've been moving in this direction already, so now with the Switch with a lot more power, I expect to see that, and I think it could look something like what we see in Xenoblade Chronicles 2. Now if you've never played or seen the game before, I'll put some gameplay here. Basically, as you explore these diverse worlds, you see all these crazy looking creatures moving about the game world, and I expect something similar for Pokemon Switch, and it could work out really well. It'll be really exciting. I think a lot of people will really love this, and I don't think it's that crazy of a thing to expect. Now, something else I think could be coming back, right now, moving away from graphics and stuff, is Ride Pokemon. Now, Ride Pokemon are basically the replacement for HMs, and HMs are basically these moves you learned throughout the different Pokemon games that allowed you to interact with the game world and move forward. Like, for example, if there was a giant tree, you could cut it down. If there's a boulder, you can move it with different Pokemon you have that you teach them the HM moves. In Sun and Moon and Ultra Sun and Moon, and they took the HMs out altogether, and they introduced Ride Pokemon, which have the same effect. You can use these Ride Pokemon to interact with the game world and do all sorts of crazy stuff, except this time it's way more fun with Ride Pokemon, because it's actually like you riding a Pokemon, be it flying, running around on a Tauros, breaking down boulders, or traversing, walls and mountains, surfing, all this crazy sort of cool stuff like that. I think we'll see even more of that in Pokemon Switch. They might introduce even more Ride Pokemon, offer more, various ways to play and explore the game world, which I think is really cool. It diversifies the gameplay. It offers some more sort of explorative, platformery, arcadey kind of ways to play the game within an RPG, which I think is really cool, and I think it'd be a great way to make the game, well, like I said beforehand, more diverse. Now, something I expect to be returning from previous generations before Sun and Moon is Pokemon gyms, like the traditional Pokemon gyms with the gym leader at the end. I expect that to return this time. I don't think this is going to be in Alola. I think we've gone Alola for the last 2 years in a row, back-to-back games. I think they're going to be moving away with Alola, and by moving away from Alola, we will also be moving away from Trials. Now, the thing about Trials, though, is that they incorporated, more exploration of the game world, more challenges and puzzles and searching for things, more interactivity with the game world, right? I think they're still going to be taking that idea, though, and incorporating them into the gym battles. And to be honest, it's not something we haven't seen before in previous gym leader places, right? Like, there were sometimes traps and puzzles to solve and deal with. I think they're simply going to take it to a whole other level, kind of like what they did with Trials, maybe slightly more in Pokemon Switch. Maybe each gym will kind of feel like a little bit like a mini dungeon, and then you'll have a gym leader at the end. That would be really cool, and I think that's something reasonable to expect, especially considering that they were already doing it in Sun and Moon, and I just expect them to be moving in that direction even more so this time around. Now, something else I actually expect to be returning from Generation 7 is the Battle Agency. Now, Battle Agency was introduced in Ultra Sun and Moon, and basically allowed you to battle with rental Pokemon. And rental Pokemon have a lot of potential here. I think they could take this mode to a whole other level, even if it's not called Battle Agency anymore, make it more kind of like something along the lines of Pokemon Stadium. I think this would be really cool, and I think it would be a great way to offer alternative gameplay modes just aside from the campaign, considering that the Pokemon Switch is also home console. I think Game Freak is going to be thinking about what sort of ways they can make this Pokemon experience not just geared for a handheld experience, but also for a home console experience. And by taking the rentals mode into a whole other level, kind of like Pokemon Stadium, could offer a separate, local multiplayer mode for people to play together with. So, this mode could be separate from the main campaign. As you progress through the game, maybe you obtain more rentals, maybe you can use your own Pokemon that you build up, maybe you can use Pokemon from Pokemon Bank, and you could have a lot of different Pokemon to choose from to build teams to battle with each other. Maybe they could have different little tournaments or little arcade challenges with these different rental Pokemon you pick within the local multiplayer, which could be really cool. I mean, the Switch literally comes with 2 controllers right out of the box, so I definitely expect Game Freak to sort of incorporate some sort of multiplayer mode, and this could be one way they could easily do it. Now, another possibility for local multiplayer could be minigames. Going back to the whole Pokemon Stadium idea, they could be also potentially take the whole minigame idea and incorporate that as well into Pokemon Switch. Now, that may be a little bit too much to ask, but it might not be. I mean, if you look at Ultra Sun and Moon, they incorporated a lot of little minigames throughout the experience. What if they incorporate even more minigame experiences in Pokemon Switch, and then as you progress through the main campaign, you unlock more and more minigames that you can play with in local multiplayer or some sort of party mode. And again, it would be another way to really flesh out Pokemon Switch to make it more geared towards a home console experience by offering different ways to have local multiplayer. Now, moving away from local multiplayer, let's actually talk about online multiplayer. Now, online multiplayer is definitely going to be getting a focus with Pokemon Switch this time around for a few reasons. One, the Switch is more powerful, it has more online connectivity, it's going to be partially a home console, so that also sort of lends itself to having more of a constant online connection. But on top of that, Nintendo's online service is coming out in September, and with Nintendo's new paid online service, I'm pretty confident that Game Freak is going to want to do something with Pokemon this time around to really take advantage of those improved online servers and, you know, take it to a whole other level. So what could we be seeing this time around? Well, I definitely expect to see all the online features we've seen from previous Pokemon games, maybe improve upon those a little bit as well, but I also expect to see maybe some online, you know, actual MMO-like features. Now hold your hats. I'm not saying Pokemon Switch is going to be an MMO like World of Warcraft. I'm saying it'll have some features that are reminiscent of MMO games. So for example, maybe they could introduce PvP. PvP means player versus player, so, you know, we already have battles with multiplayer. What if there was a way to get into opposing, you know, other game players' worlds and explore it a little bit and actually lock eyes and battle? That'd be really cool, and it's definitely possible. It's something we've seen in other games, like for example the Dark Souls games, so they could introduce that. Another interesting thing about Dark Souls games is they also have co-op, where you can work together fighting different enemies and do different things like that, have different quests. They could introduce co-op quests in Pokemon Switch as well, so players could get into other players' game worlds and you know, complete certain challenges together, be that double battles, or maybe there's some sort of ride Pokemon race, or some sort of minigame mechanics that you can have play together. That could be really cool, and it could really, you know, encourage more co-op play. And because it's on the Switch, because there's more of an online connectivity, we could be seeing free DLC updates on a weekly or monthly basis that incorporate weekly quests, you know, and that could be really cool. We've already seen sort of like, you know, sort of online community quests in previous Pokemon games, where there were certain quotas that needed to be met. They could sort of flesh that out even more, so have more quotas, but also have sort of large parties where you have certain goals to meet together, where you can meet up at some sort of point. Maybe they could even reintroduce union rooms way back from what we saw in Generation 3, where if you had enough players who had, you know, the little wireless adapter back then, you can meet in a giant room together with multiple players, like I think it was up to 20 if I remember correctly, it might be wrong there, where you could all trade, battle, and communicate with each other. They could have that as well. Maybe certain sections of the game where people can sort of explore along with everyone else in a sort of like a mini MMO experience. So between PvP, co-op, you know, online DLC quests, union rooms, I think they could really incorporate a lot more little cool online features to make this game feel even more immersive and take advantage of Nintendo's new online service. One more quick little thing, I think they could flesh out maybe the player search system, the thing that we saw in X and Y. It'd basically be incorporated into Pokemon Switch, where you could have this sort of constant engagement with your players you already met, or for your friends, where you can battle, trade, or communicate with them the entire time throughout gameplay. I mean, it's kind of easy. It's something they've sort of done already, so I wouldn't be shocked if they brought that back in as well. So moving away from online features, as cool as that all can be, I think we could be seeing a lot of amiibo functionality this time around, because the Switch has amiibo functionality right outside of the box. Unlike the 3DS, not all 3DS models had amiibo functionality, so when Pokemon didn't really, you know, Game Freak didn't focus on amiibo functionality with the Pokemon games. Because of that, you would be alienating players, but with Pokemon Switch, you will not be alienating players since it's on the Switch. Now, how would amiibo work out? I actually think this is going to be a new generation, so if that's the case, there will be well over 1,000 new Pokemon probably. And I don't think there's going to be an amiibo figurine for each and every Pokemon, but there may be an amiibo figurine for certain popular Pokemon. What they could also do, we've seen patents for it already, we've seen it to a bit already, is these amiibo cards. These amiibo cards are basically cards that have an NFC chip in it that makes it function just like an amiibo, except it's not a piece of plastic, it's just a card, which would be a lot cheaper and easier to make. So with these cards, you can basically have maybe, I don't know if they will do every single Pokemon, but you can have a lot more Pokemon that would be featured as an amiibo card. So what would these figurines and amiibo cards actually do though? Well, one thing I think they could do is actually offer up a Pokemon whenever you scan it into your game, and these Pokemon could be Pokemon with hidden abilities. It could be a great way to introduce the hidden abilities in this Pokemon game. There's always some sort of weird way to introduce hidden ability Pokemon in every Pokemon game, and Amiibo could be one of the ways you can do it. I don't think it would be the only way, because then you would be alienating players by forcing them to buy, you know, extra content with Amiibos, but I think it could be perhaps the more popular way, the easier way, and there could be a harder way to get hidden ability Pokemon. But this way you could be getting a whole bunch of hidden ability Pokemon by getting different Amiibo, and it would be really cool. And if you just want a particular Pokemon and their hidden ability, you could buy that particular Amiibo or Amiibo card, and that would work out pretty well. And the Amiibo could even also offer like daily like potions and like, you know, Pokeballs and stuff like that if you scan them in on a daily basis. And I think that'd be a great way to sort of, you know, flesh out the Amiibo functionality and offer a lot more collectibles for Pokemon Switch. And that's pretty much everything I expect for Pokemon Switch, guys. I think it's a lot. I think there's a pretty good possibility for all of them. I don't know, you know, some of them may be slightly less likely than the others, like the mini games might not be that likely, but I do think there's going to be some sort of local multiplayer this time around because it's on the Switch, which is both a home console and a handheld. So we'll see. But I want to know what you guys think. But wait, one more thing actually, I almost forgot. I don't think, as some rumors are suggesting, that the battle system will change from being turn-based. I think it's still going to be turn-based. Because the thing about being turn-based is that that's just what Pokemon has been since the beginning. It started off as this simple turn-based RPG, and over the years it's progressively gone more and more advanced as a turn-based RPG. Yes, it's simple to sort of pick up and play, but it actually has a lot of depth, and there's actually a huge competitive scene. And if they were to rid away the turn-based mechanics, you would completely destroy the competitive scene. And I think Pokemon Company and Game Freak acknowledge the competitive community a lot, so I don't think they're going to take away from that. It's kind of like a, you know, a marketing slash business mechanic for Pokemon, so I don't think they're going to do anything to really turn away and ruin the competitive scene. And in fact, if you look at the different Pokemon games the last few years, they have continually incorporated more and more ways to make it easier to build up a competitive team in Pokemon. So I think they're actually probably going to find ways to improve the competitive scene, offering more mechanics and little hints and tricks, tips and tricks to, you know, make it even easier to build competitive Pokemon teams this time around. So I definitely don't think they're going to ditch the battle system. I don't think that's likely. But who knows? There are some rumors out there that say they will. So we'll see, hopefully in a couple months. Now, yeah, guys, that's basically everything I have to say about Pokemon Switch. I think we will be seeing Pokemon Switch before E3, because usually every year we get a Pokemon game that is revealed before E3, so I expect something similar this year as well. When exactly, I'm not sure. We are in that window, which is probably why we're getting all these crazy rumors. So, you know, I think it could happen as late as early June. But it could also happen in May or April. So we'll see what happens, guys. Let me know what you guys think about all these possibilities for Pokemon Switch. I want to know what you guys expect from Pokemon Switch, or what you want to see in Pokemon Switch. It'd be really cool. So, you know, let me know in the comments below. Without further, you know, explanation and drawing this all out, yeah, thanks for watching, everyone. Make sure to like this video. It would really help out. And subscribe if you haven't seen Nintendo-related content, if you want to see more Nintendo-related content. And yeah, bye. See you later. Take care.